Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Sorry for the shiny forehead. I don't have a makeup team, so you have to forgive me. You can probably hear Samuel talking in the background. I mainly wanted to talk about the importance of advocating for your child, your loved one, your parent, your family member, your friend in the hospital when they're dealing with stuff. And I wanted to share two stories. They're mainly for a new friend that I just made, but I wanted to cover them. So I'm going to jump right into that. Number one, after Samuel had his second surgery, he had they always put, when you have a heart valve, they always put you in on a blood thinner called heparin, which is an immediate blood thinner. It goes right into the bloodstream. Samuel was 6 months old, so he's super tiny, and they didn't have they had a PICC line that they would use to administer it, and then when they would test it, they would pull the feed, flush it, and then draw directly from that PICC line. Every time they did this, they were seeing a high level of the blood thinner. Then they would stop the feed for 45 minutes, come back and test it, and then he would be super low. So my wife, realizing that something was not right with this, insisted they put in a second PICC line or draw from somewhere else. And they said, well, we can't do that. A second PICC line could cause infection, blah, 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 all this stuff. My wife insisted, and they ignored her, and she didn't push it. Well, then it was a Tuesday night. I was hanging out with some business partners, and I got a text from Stephanie, call me, capital letters, exclamation points. I slip out, I call her, I'm like, hey, babe, is everything okay? She is in hysterics. She is so upset, and I finally get it out of her. I'm already on my way to the car, packed up, ready to go. And I'm like, what's up? And I finally get it that Samuel's eyes had rolled into the back of his head. Long and short, he'd had strokes. He was in the PICU, the pediatric ICU, and he had multiple strokes. 2 weeks later, he ended up clotting out the valve that they had just put in at 6 months. So he ended up having two major medical events because we didn't push hard enough. We did get it pushed hard enough, but it was too late at that point. Then the second story of advocating was when Samuel was probably around 14, 15 months. It was actually over Christmas. It was between Christmas and New Year's. We were all hanging out in the hospital because that's what we did. Our son's there. We're going to hang out there. I think Isaiah was with his mom. So we were, Stephanie thought something was wrong. She couldn't tell. She could always tell by the way he reacted, how he ate, how all this stuff was, something was up. And she asked them to do an EKG just to make sure the heart valve was okay, do a heart scan, make sure everything was good. And unfortunately, they didn't want to do that. The nurses said no. She was exhausted. I said, fine, I'll step in. I went and talked to the nurses. I pushed. They said no. And I finally said, listen, let me talk to a doctor. I talked to the doctor on call. The doctor on call didn't want to do it. I said, no, you need to push it. And eventually I pushed through, and I had a doctor drive in the middle of the night. It was like 11 o'clock. There was fresh snow on the ground. It was probably the first snow of the season. I remember seeing the tracks of his car as he drove to the hospital because we were on the 7th floor, and I could see the road. And I know it's an odd thing, but it's in the city streets. There's white snow. You can see the tire tracks. Anyway, long and short, he ended up they ended up doing the heart scan, the EKG. It wasn't EKG. It was the where they run the sonogram to make sure the heart valve's working okay. And thankfully, everything was okay. But I don't regret advocating for it, and I don't regret advocating because of our experiences. And later, after we'd spoken to his main doctor, his doctor actually gave us his personal number and said, listen, if you have any problems getting something done, if you know something's wrong, you tell me. Here's my phone number. Call me. So I am 100% an advocate for knowing your patient, knowing your person, the person you love, digging in, pushing for things. Yes, listen to reason, listen to whatever. But if you know something's wrong, you know the patient better than they do. Medical science is only so good right now. It's pretty good. And I have to say, UPMC Children's is probably one of the better hospitals at listening to parents. But even still, they make mistakes, and you have to push. So those are my stories. I hope this inspires you to advocate for your loved ones, and I appreciate you guys.
What were you doing?